This nightmare must end. The Trump-Pence regime must go. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. We are horrified and angered at the shocking damage already done to lives here and around the world by the Trump-Pence regime. We recognize that they are poised to do far worse, including threatening war, even nuclear war. Through an unrelenting barrage of daily outrages and Twitter outbursts, the Trump-Pence regime is radically remaking society. Step by step, they are hammering into place a vicious American fascism. This is not insult or exaggeration. It is what they are doing. Therefore, we resolve that nothing short of removing this whole illegitimate regime from power will stop this nightmare.
Welcome. I want to welcome everybody here tonight in person in New York City, everybody tuning in across the country and gatherings like this tonight and in the coming days to launch this new, renewed effort around this new call to action from refusefascism.org. You are in the right place. At this dangerous hour, people the whole world over, whether they realize it or not, are counting on those of us living in this country to rise to the challenge of stopping a fascist America, to come together and drive out the Trump-Pence regime. So everybody here is filling a great need, and this is what we are going to be announcing plans to rise to this challenge, how we're going to work together tonight and in the days and weeks going ahead to do this. There is no place more important you could possibly be tonight, and there is nothing more important you could dedicate your time, your talents, your energy, your networks of friends and family and faith and co-workers to doing than to join in this mission together with us across this country. As we begin, if you are watching this online, I want to ask you to take a moment to spread this on Facebook or Twitter to grow our audience, to ask your friends and networks to tune in. And with that, I want to let you know that my name is Sansara Taylor. I am a writer for Revolution newspaper, the voice of the Revolutionary Communist Party, RevCom.us, led by Bob Avakian. I'm also a co-initiator of refusefascism.org. And I'm going to be your host for tonight. Refusefascism.org is a movement of people coming from diverse perspectives, united in our common recognition that the Trump-Pence regime poses a catastrophic danger to humanity and to the planet, and that it is our responsibility to drive them from power through mass, nonviolent protests that grow every day until our demand is met. This means working and organizing with all our creativity and determination to bring thousands and eventually millions of people into the streets to demand this nightmare must end, the Trump-Pence regime must go. The plans we will get into tonight are aimed at accelerating the forging of the political will and the organized strength and capacity of this movement and organization, to launch the outpourings of protest of a new kind that succeed in driving out this fascist regime. And our plan is to bend every effort to be in position to launch these mass outpourings that sustain and build until millions are in the streets and we create the kind of political crisis that forces this fascist regime from power. We aim to get in position to launch this by summer. Refusefascism.org welcomes individuals and organizations from many different viewpoints who share our determination to refuse to accept a fascist America, to work with us, to join us, to partner with us in rising to this great cause. Tonight, you will hear the new call to action which we have just issued. This is a tremendous political statement and pledge which defines our mission and pulls together in a single popular piece the situation we face and what we must do about it. After that, I will come and speak about our plans to realize the vision laid out in it. And then after that, we will turn off the live stream, and all of us here in New York City and around the country will talk together and work together to make plans to make this real. But first, to set some context as to the moment in which we're gathered the stakes which grow higher literally by the day, I want to introduce Andy Z. He is the spokesperson for Revolution Books. He is also a co-initiator of Refuse Fascism, and he is somebody we should all give a warm applause to as we go.
I want to thank everybody for coming out here in New York and tuning in around the country tonight, and also in the future watching this on live stream. We're approaching a fork in the road. Tonight, Refuse Fascism puts before the world the stark truth that the Trump-Pence regime is a fascist regime that is step by step bringing about a fascist America. And that there is a way, a road that requires courage, conviction, and determination to stop it. The stakes are high and acutely posed as we meet this evening, because the Trump-Pence regime is on the verge of two major leaps that also pose forks in the road for the people of this country, with stakes for all of humanity. One, should Trump act to fire Special Prosecutor Mueller, demonstrating that the Trump-Pence regime regards itself as above the law? This will challenge the people of this country to decide whether or not they are willing to go down the road towards fascism. Accepting such a move by Trump, even if just by going out in the streets for a day and then going back to business as usual, will signal to the Trump-Pence regime and their powerful backers that they can tear up the rule of law. That we won't stand in the way of their consolidating all power in their hands as they move to impose a fascist America on the world. Trump already feels the heat, and should he fire Mueller, he will face tremendous pressure to move fast to suppress opposition at the highest levels of government and throughout society. The question is, will we meet this challenge? Two, Trump has cleared out all the vacillating and less obedient members of his inner circle, forging a fascist war and torture cabal, seriously heightening the danger of war, including nuclear war. Gina Haspel, his nominee to head the CIA, is a war criminal, a torturer who covered up her crimes. Mike Pompeo, the Trump-Pence nominee for Secretary of State, is a fascist Tea Party leader known for his vicious hatred of Islam and the lies, vicious hatred of Islam and his advocacy of war and torture. And then there's John Bolton, who is already the new National Security Advisor. He was a key architect of the Iraq War and the lies that justified it. And he is a bloodthirsty warmonger who advocates preemptively eliminating North Korea, even putting forth a bogus legal theory to justify this, which would be a war crime. Bolton also wrote in the New York Times, quote, "To stop Iran's bomb Iran." The Trump-Pence regime is determined to scuttle the Iran deal, to further unleash Israel and Saudi Arabia as attack dogs. All this will greatly increase the danger of even wider, more deadly wars. Do we have any conception of and responsibility to that this is? Yet, in the wake of these there has been no protest. Zero. When it is not even an open secret that the Trump-Pence regime is plotting for major war. It's in their sights, and it is what they are planning for. So here, too, is a crossroads for the people of this country. Are we going to accept the logic and the lies that will be used to justify the killing, potentially, of millions of people? This is the human cost that John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, has said explicitly would be worth it if the U.S. could take out North Korea's weapons. Or Is your morality so poisoned by the ideology of America first, or by the comfort of your life, that you will not stand up and act? Do we believe that American lives are worth more than the lives of other people? Or are we going to rise to what history and humanity demand of us and take to the streets to demand that these moves towards war be stopped, they must stop now, and that the Trump-Pence regime be removed from power? The 2018 Refuse Fascism call to act, which we are about to present this evening, says straight up, quote, "If we adjust to the injustice of this regime, do not ask how the German people could have accepted Nazism in the 1930s. These two crossroads, the possibility that Trump will make a decisive move to assert that he and his regime are above the law, and the present danger of escalating war, and coming from many different backgrounds and points of view, to stop through massive, nonviolent protests that doesn't stop until this illegitimate, illegal, and immoral regime is removed from power." For over 14 months, Refuse Fascism has put forth, backed by substantive analysis, that what we face is a regime, not the worst of reactionary Republican administrations, but a regime that is radically remaking society in a fascist direction. And that the only way to stop this is through massive, nonviolent, sustained protests in cities and towns across the country, protests that don't stop until the Trump-Pence regime is removed from power. But the millions of people who deeply abhor in their hearts this regime are being told by the Democratic Party leadership and those who front for it that there is an easier way to stop Trump: elect the Democrats to Congress. We pose to you tonight, if this is your strategy, you don't understand that this is a fascist regime. If you see the horror of Trump as just a swing of the pendulum and the midterms as the answer, you will necessarily mute any protests. Your blue wave will carry you crashing into the rocks of a regime that will stop at nothing. More, if you did elect a Democratic House, then what? The Democratic leadership has taken impeachment off the table. They have no answer as to what to do about Pence and the whole fascist regime, and the whole fascist movement that's behind them. And let's get down to the real deal. The Democratic Party leadership, for them, their dispute with Trump and Pence is over how to rule and advance the interests of the American empire. Do you really think that if the U.S. launches a bombing in the Mideast or against North Korea, that these leaders of the Democratic Party will do anything other than be a part of or vie for leadership of a wave of American chauvinism? And when they do, this will further clear the path for the Trump-Pence regime to further consolidate their power. Recall that every leading Democrat, Pelosi, Schumer, has vowed to work with Trump where they can. No, you don't work with and normalize fascism. Look, we're not calling fascism to hype anyone into action. But consider, what do you call it when people are demonized and attacked for who they are? Immigrants, black people, women, LGBTQ people, refugees, Muslims, Jewish people, the disabled, Native Americans, any and everyone who opposes this regime's white America first rule. What do you call it when civil liberties and basic democratic rights are cast aside? You call it fascism. We must not shirk from it, but confront the truth and unite to say no. So I'm asking you tonight to go to refusefascism.org to learn more, to donate, to sign the call, and to join the movement to put an end to this. In closing, I reiterate that we are at a crossroads. The stakes are the future of humanity. Right now, the Trump-Pence regime faces increasing necessity, domestically and internationally, to radically restructure U.S. governance and international relations. They are shattering all norms. And they have made great progress, ramming into policy their America First and Make America Great Again fascist agenda. The danger of war, and again potentially nuclear war, and of this regime dropping the hammer with new, more draconian laws that take away democratic and civil rights means that there must be real urgency to our organizing and to our forging broad unity. We cannot predict when the Trump-Pence regime will have made a qualitative leap in consolidating fascism. Yet we recognize that what they have already set in motion requires that everyone who refuses to live in a fascist America unite with refuse fascism, and then together we must bend every effort to mount the kind of struggle that is put forth in the 2018 Refuse Fascism Call to Act. And as part of getting to that point, everyone, every organization must not allow this regime to launch a war, a massive bombing, or subvert the rule of law by firing the special prosecutor, but instead take to the streets.
Yes.
This nightmare must end. The Trump-Pence regime must go. And in the name of humanity, we must refuse to accept a fascist America. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Andy Z, one of our co-initiators, and with that I want to bring up our readers. This is going to be the unveiling of our new call to action for 2018 from refusefascism.org. Let's hear it for them. Woo! This nightmare must end.
The Trump-Pence regime must go. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. We are horrified and angered at the shocking damage already done to lives here and around the world by the Trump-Pence regime. We recognize that they are poised to do far worse, including threatening war, even nuclear war. Through an unrelenting barrage of daily outrages and Twitter outbursts, the Trump-Pence regime is radically remaking society. Step by step, they are hammering into place a vicious American fascism. This is not insult or exaggeration, it is what they are doing. Therefore, we resolve that nothing short of removing this whole illegitimate regime from power will stop this nightmare.
There is a way to do this. To do so, we must cast aside all illusions and self-delusions. All too many people think and act as if what we face is just the worst of a pendulum swing between Republican and Democrat. No, this regime, if left in power, will effect a thoroughly reactionary restructuring of society. If we think that the normal processes of the 2018 or 2020 elections or the Mueller investigation will by themselves redress the situation that humanity now faces, we are not understanding the determination of these fascists in power to shatter norms, even though they have been doing so for over a year.
If we think that the heightened activism of the past year, either by itself or together with the election, will stop this regime, we are missing how much harm this regime has already done, absorbing individual protest as it rapidly moves its agenda forward on multiple fronts. If we are not as outraged and motivated to act today as we were right after the election, we are on our way to accepting or ignoring the great horror that builds daily. If we adjust to the injustice of this regime, we do not have to ask how the German people could have accepted Nazism in the 1930s.
And American fascism. We must not reassure ourselves that it could not happen here. It is. Trump's Make America Great Again is a 21st century fascist program of manifest destiny. America First wrapped in the flag and Mike Pence's Bible taken literally, with the program of white supremacy, misogyny, and xenophobia.
This regime denies truth and objective evidence.
and yet it has its hands on the most powerful military and nuclear arsenal in history, and they are preparing and threatening to use it. Millions of immigrants live in terror, fearing that their loved ones will be ripped away. People's humanity is viciously denied. Women are poised to lose the right to abortion. Trump and Sessions have instructed the police to take the gloves off, further brutalizing people of color. LGBTQ rights recently won are under assault. Damage done to the environment by this regime in just 14 months could be irreversible. Fascism rules by organized repression and terror by the government. Civil liberties are stripped away, law rewritten, dissent criminalized, the courts packed with fascists, and the separation of powers and church and state ultimately eviscerated. As part of radically remaking society, the Trump-Pence regime must sharply attack those in positions of power who oppose them. Fascism also mobilizes mobs of vicious fascist thugs, as we've seen with Nazis marching and murdering in Charlottesville, Virginia. The Trump-Pence regime has not yet been able to implement their full program, but they are advancing. It might only take a single serious crisis, international or domestic, for this regime to drop the hammer. Don't normalize, don't accommodate, don't conciliate, don't collaborate.
Yes.
People all over the world are counting on us to stop this nightmare. The different strains of fascist demagogues and movements in this country see in Trump and Pence their last chance to achieve their reactionary program. They will not listen to facts or reason. They have and already will continue to change the rules, manipulate elections, and they will not give up. The Democratic Party leadership will not just activists. They are about maintaining order for their whole setup. For them, order is more important than justice, even if that means the order of fascism.
Way. A different kind of protest. We need to organize now for the time when we can launch massive, sustained, non-violent protest in the streets of cities and towns across the country. Protests that continue day after day and don't stop, creating the kind of political situation in which the demand that the Trump-Pence regime be removed from power is met.
Everyone who recognizes that the Trump-Pence nightmare must end is invited to join in and prepare for launching this great act of sustained resistance. Imagine tens of thousands beginning in several cities and towns, with marches, candlelight vigils, rallies, with students, religious communities, immigrants, everyone with a heart for humanity in the streets and not backing down, growing from thousands to hundreds of thousands and eventually millions. Our actions will reflect the values of respect for all of humanity and the world we want, in stark contrast to the hatred and bigotry of the Trump-Pence fascist regime. The whole world will take heart.
This will shake millions awake. With many losing their adjustment to life under this regime, the international credibility of this regime will be undermined. A determined struggle that doesn't yield and won't be provoked can create a serious political crisis. Those in power, who are themselves now under attack by this regime but conciliating with it, would be compelled to respond to the struggle from below, leading to a situation where this illegitimate regime is removed from power.
This would be hard, but possible. Possible because millions of us feel the horror of Trump and Pence. Many have righteously protested different outrages, but now we must rise to another level of determined resistance.
We must confront the reality that the world as we have known it is being torn asunder. This requires getting out of our comfort zones and not allowing our differences to stand in the way of rising together in an unprecedented, unrelenting, mass struggle to confront the danger of the Trump-Pence fascist America.
For all of you watching on the live stream, for you in this room now, for those that will join us in the future, this is a call and response. We pledge that we will not stand aside while there is
that we
will not stand aside while there is
still a chance to stop a regime that imperils humanity
to stop a regime that imperils humanity
and the earth itself.
and the earth itself.
Join us.
Let's
stand together.
Let's stand together
With conviction and courage.
with conviction and courage,
Overcoming fear and uncertainty.
overcoming fear and uncertainty,
To struggle with all we've got.
to struggle with all we've got,
To demand.
the
Trump-Pence regime must go.
The Trump-Pence regime must go.
In the name of humanity.
In the name of humanity,
We refuse to accept
we refuse to accept
a fascist America.
a fascist America.
This nightmare must end.
This nightmare must end.
The Trump-Pence regime must go.
The Trump-Pence regime must go.
All right, so that is our new call to action. That is a powerful statement. It is a powerful statement, and it's a powerful pledge we've taken together tonight. And it's one that we have to spread throughout society and we have to make real. Tonight we are kicking off an intense period and process of struggle and organizing over the next 3 to 4 months to forge a movement of sufficient influence, strength, understanding, alliance with others, and organization to kick off that different kind of protest the call just spoke about. Not just for a day, not just to vent our outrage and go home and tell ourselves we've done something, but to stay in the streets and to rouse millions to join us in the streets in the name of humanity, to drive out a fascist regime that truly does imperil humanity and the planet itself. So there are 4 major components to the plan we're going to get into and the plan we have forged. And I'm going to lay them out for you. The first one is creating broad understanding of the danger that we confront, the danger involved in the Trump-Pence regime, and why only this kind of massive struggle from below can succeed in driving it from power and stopping a fascist America. Fundamentally, people act on what they understand. And the truth is that right now, though a lot of people hate Trump, most of them are not acting the way they need to. So we have to go out to fight to change the way people are thinking. The glue of this is the call to action you just heard. And we just got this beautiful new design. We've got thousands and thousands of copies printed. We're going to print more around the country. This call to action needs to be spread. In the next several weeks, all of us need to organize to spread tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of copies of this, shaping and influencing people's thinking, waking them up and giving them direction. We need to take this to high schools where students are rising up and in a mood for struggle. We need to take this to faith communities of every kind across this country. We need to take this to artistic gatherings, out to museums and festivals and farmers markets, not just the usual suspects where people are protesting, although we have to be there. But everywhere in society, we need to spread this call to action. Also, with this, we need to be spreading the symbols and the ways for people to represent for this movement and the slogans that you heard. This nightmare must end. The Trump-Pence regime must go. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. We need to spread the stickers all throughout society. We need buttons. We need the posters in people's yards, on their car bumpers, on their backpacks, so that thousands and tens of thousands of people can represent and that they are part of this movement and galvanize others. These are ways of influencing the thinking of people. Another major tool that we have in this is the recent talk from Bob Avakian, which we should be spreading and we should be getting into. It's called "The Trump-Pence Regime Must Go. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. A better world is possible." And this talk, given by Bob Avakian, is, I think, the single greatest resource that pulls together a scientific understanding of the roots of this regime, this fascist regime, looking at the history of this country, going back to the Confederacy and the slavery that was in the founding of this country, to things like the more recent development over the last several decades of a Christian fascist movement, which is concentrated in Mike Pence and everything he represents, together with the challenging situation that this American empire is facing in the world, and how this has come together to bring to the fore a fascist America and a fascist regime. And Bob Avakian pulls no punches in leading us to confront the full stakes of the danger that this means and our responsibility. And he issues a very specific call to act, and it will make a big difference for many, many, many more people to see this film and to be moved by it. And so this is another tool we have to spread all throughout the country. We need to organize showings of it in church basements, in classrooms, in living rooms, in big theaters, outdoors, in the parks, on social media. We need to spread this. This is a big part of changing the way people are thinking. And the more this film spreads, the more people are going to see the need to join with the mission of Refuse Fascism. So all this is the first part of our plan, going and fighting to change how people are thinking, spreading the call to action by the hundreds of thousands, spreading the stickers and the slogans, spreading this talk from Bob Avakian, and organizing people through all of this to be part of this together with us and to lay the basis for the second phase of our plan. So the second part, and it's really the heart of our plan, is that if you want to stop a fascist America and you want to build up the strength of a movement that's ready to put a lot on the line to struggle to stop a fascist America, we have to act. We have to take bold and daring political actions that shake people out of their normalcy, that lead people to confront the representatives of this fascist regime and the others in power who normalize and are enabling this regime. We need actions that stir people and wake them and arouse in them their desire to fight, and then attract those who feel like they're going crazy and they want to find something that they can do about it. Every movement has always had, every movement that has succeeded has always had people who get out ahead of where others are at. The first people who sat down at the lunch counter, 4 students, they were way ahead of where the rest of society were to go up against segregation and Jim Crow. They were ahead of where the civil rights movement was at the time. But through putting themselves on the line, they changed what other people felt. They set a different standard, and they attracted more people to take that same stand. And this has been true of the suffragettes who went on hunger strikes. This is true of the teenagers who burned their draft cards during the Vietnam War. And it will be true of this movement as well. We need to be organizing. And through the next several weeks, where we're distributing the call to action and building a network of organizers through doing that, we need to be strategizing. What will be the actions that we take? A whole series of actions that put the demand the Trump-Pence regime must go before society, and that drive people to the website refusefascism.org and build up the fighting strength and influence the thinking of millions to put this on the agenda and hasten and get prepared for the time, hopefully this summer, when we can launch the sustained outpourings to drive this regime from power. The third thing we need to do, and you'll notice that each of these dimensions interpenetrate, but the third element of our plan is we have to get much more organized. We have to grow the organization Refuse Fascism. And we have to grow the networks of communities and other organizations who are working with us in this common goal. Our chapters need to get bigger. They need to involve many, many, many more people. We need more chapters around the country. If you're watching, you can become a chapter organizer. We will work with you out of our national office. We need more people who are beyond the chapters, who are seeing themselves as part of this movement, who are spreading the stickers and wearing it around, who are spreading the posters, who are representing for this, and who see themselves as part of the active and growing network across this country that is getting ready to launch these sustained outpourings. And this also includes going to legal forces and religious forces, people who will be lawyers and defenders and help supply logistics for these mass outcomes when they begin. All that work needs to begin now. We need to be organizing the strength to not only launch, but to sustain outpourings of tens of thousands in cities across this country that grow to millions. And right now, the two key ways that people get organized with us is to become part of the networks distributing the call to action, discussing the call to action, and taking part in the fourth part of our plan. So the fourth part of our plan is that we are raising money and asking you to donate money. And this is a very important part of our plan. Because, like I said before, we are not trying to get out here and say, oh yeah, we were the ones who said we hated fascism as fascism got consolidated. We fought the good fight, but then humanity slid into darkness. That's not why we're here. We are fighting to win. And to win, we have to reach millions of people. We have to galvanize and organize thousands of people now and grow to millions. And that requires millions of dollars. The people are out there. They are sick at heart, many of them. We have to reach them. So I want you to think about where you put your resources. This is the first step. Where do you put your resources? People save for things that they hope for, that they aspire to, that they dream about. And I want you to think about the dreams and the aspirations of the families who are being torn apart right now by ICE. And the lives, the thousands and the millions of lives in Iran and North Korea who are in the crosshairs of this regime. And I want you to ask yourself, how much do their hopes and their aspirations and their dreams matter to you? What is that worth? And what would it be worth to have a movement that reached the millions in this country who are sick at heart and could organize them into an actual political force that could drive this regime from power? And I want you to, tonight, make a generous contribution. Make a contribution that hurts to stop a world of hurt for humanity. And then I want you to join with us in an ongoing, sustained, and growing movement of fundraising, where we reach out to people everywhere we go, at farmers markets and high schools, on the streets, in the churches, and ask people to donate on the street, and go and organize bake sales and yard sales, and work to hold fundraising parties, and go and find people with much greater resources. Do systematic outreach to find people who can give thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. Because every bit of money that we raise for this movement means we can reach more people and increases our chance of success. And fundraising itself, and a movement of fundraising, is a very critical way of getting organized and building our strength to be able to sustain this movement. So those are the four dimensions of our plan. It is getting the word out everywhere, changing how people think. That's one. Two, acting. And right now we're going to launch those actions in a few weeks, but we're preparing, we're signing people up for nonviolent direct actions that stir the soul of society. Number three, we are getting organized. Everybody has to have a place in this movement, and it's our responsibility to give them a way to be involved in a sustained and ongoing way. And fourth is fundraising. So, working together, this is how we get in position over the next 3 to 4 months to launch this outpouring, this sustained mass and growing protest across the country that does not stop until the regime has been removed from power. Of course, we are not undertaking these actions in a vacuum. We're not just carrying out our plan off to the side of society. There are huge events breaking every day. Andy just talked about the threat that Trump has issued to bomb Syria, the increased threat against Iran and North Korea, the threat to fight a murder. Every day there's a new outrage. And we have to be alive to these. We have to respond to the outrages. We have to respond to things that open up through struggle from below. Masses of people stand up against sexual violence or police killing or gun violence. We have to be tense to this and seize on the openings that it provides. But we have to keep our eyes on the prize and keep in mind that unless and until this regime is driven from power, these nightmares will go on and on. So through it all, we have to be building this movement to launch this outpouring to drive this regime out. And in this regard, I want to highlight, it is so important that we have a national office, we have a national social media platform, our Twitter feed, our Facebook feed, our Instagram. These are places people should be going every day. They're how we're responding to changes in the world in a unified way and with a unified objective. And people should feed in and contribute to this, and they should check these outlets every day and get direction from them. So finally, having laid out our plan and before we conclude the live stream and get into organizing wherever we are, I just want to say that it is so important that we have gathered tonight. And we are filling a tremendous need in a critical time of human history. We must work together with largeness of mind and generosity of spirit. We should listen to each other and pick each other up when we flag. We should reach out to and organize and welcome into this movement ever more people. And we should remember that if we want others to stand up and go against the tide, we must dare to do so ourselves. If we want others to come together from different perspectives for a higher purpose, for the purpose of stopping a fascist America, we too must learn to work with and welcome people whose viewpoints are very different from our own. And we must constantly remember that we do this not just for ourselves, but in the name of humanity. So with that, I want to thank everybody who came and read and prepared, everybody who helped put this live stream on and organize the meetings around the country. And I want to restate the pledge that is at the end of the call to action and seal us in our commitment together. It says, we pledge that we will not stand aside while there is still a chance to stop a regime that imperils humanity and the earth itself. Join us. Let's stand together with courage and conviction, overcoming fear and uncertainty, to struggle with all that we've got, to demand the Trump-Pence regime must go. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. This nightmare must end. The Trump-Pence regime must go. Thank you, and let's all get to work and make it